Moving on to the Part A's. Item 19, the Linwood-Eastgate Area Integrated Transport Study. Do we have staff to come to the table for this one? Lynette, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Were there any introductory comments that you wanted to make?
The introductory comments. I'm going to pass this over to Hamid to make a couple of introductory comments and leave it as read, really. Yep. So Hamid is the author of the report.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. So in May 2017, Council made a resolution for further evaluate preferred option of Buckley's bus, passenger facilities, and to be put in the 2018 LTP, and also for the staff to develop an integrated transport study. So the integrated transport study has been finalized, has been finished, and this is a high-level document. It looks at the strategies, identifies issues, and provides recommendation. It's a very high level. It doesn't go into the details and doesn't specify what sort of what details of action has to be undertaken. Two main issues were identified in this area. One of them was the pedestrian crossing, which on Buckley's Road is not signalized. It crosses over 4 lanes of traffic, which is close to 60 km speed limit. And also a bus stop, which is located just by the pedestrian crossing, which Mr. Jasper today in the morning talked to us about it. And we identified in the report the issues with these two elements, and also some other elements like lack of tactile pavements or insufficiency in cycling facilities on road cycling facilities, or similar stuff in the area, inconsistencies in footpaths. Because this recommendation, it was too late when the report was done. It was too late for inputting into the LTP 2018. The staff came up with the solution that because currently there is a project in the area, which is intersection safety for Old Prince Buckley's Linwood intersection. This project was looked at last year, and implementation was done with minor costs. So the budget, the lump sum of 1.1 million is still in LTP available for this project. The staff recommendation is to reallocate this budget to this project, to the bus stop, to the Linwood transport study. Therefore, the recommendation of the staff for bus stop upgrade and also the pedestrian crossing could be going ahead.
Thank you. So, moving to questions, we've heard a deputation this morning which has raised a number of issues, some of which are about current behaviour.
Yes.
And some of which are about concerns as to how the opportunity to resolve some of those issues might not be taken, or in fact things could get worse as a result of implementation of further works in this area. Presumably any work that is done, given that we've seen what we've seen this morning, would provide an opportunity to address the issues that have been raised in this morning's deputation.
I would expect so, yes. Yep.
And there would be an opportunity for public participation as we moved into any decision making around final outcomes that would allow those things to be further raised.
Yes. Yes. So this study is about providing the context, and then we have to get into the real projects after that.
Yeah.
And they follow a standard process after that.
All right. So there's nothing about accepting the recommendations from the board this morning that would preclude further conversation about the issues raised in the deputation, or the issues raised in the deputation being able to be taken into account in any further actions that would result from this?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. Moving to other questions. Dion.
I just wanted to ask, given that number 2 in the resolution is specifically around that that bus stop that was mentioned this morning, are we able to put into that resolution, or make some amendments into that resolution number 2 to actually just explicitly say that we're going to discuss and talk about those? Do you think there's anything?
I don't believe we need to, because we need to do that anyway. and we needed to do that. We need to do that with a
Well, if we need to do it, then what's the problem with writing it down for some certainty?
just adds more words to the resolution is really all it
That's
is.
not a problem.
I think all we're asking is that you provide endorsement of us working on improvements for the PT facilities and the safety facilities for PEDs, crossings for pedestrians in that area, and use that funding to do that. We will have to talk with all affected parties, not just the resident that came in as with the deputation this morning.
But we can be confident that engagement will need to occur as part of that work. We don't need to call that out specifically.
I
Thank
think,
you.
I mean, I would like to call it out specifically, given that we've had a deputation about it.
But
I'm happy to move something that's on a few extra words that deals with that.
All right, I'll leave it to Sarah.
All
She's good
right,
at that.
let's deal with that at that time. I mean, there's probably no problem in acknowledging work that would naturally happen anyway. We just need to be careful that we don't, you know, there's obviously a level of engagement that will need to occur. We'll just need to make sure that whatever wording we do put in here, if we do, reflects the breadth of engagement rather than just one specific part of it that might then be seen as
I'm
excluding
happy
other
with
things.
that. I just think we do need to explicitly say it, and I think Sarah might have an
All right, so Sarah, when we come to you, we'll have a look at that wording. That's fine. Okay, great. So then I've got Yanni and then Sarah. So Yanni.
So a number of other things that were identified in the safety, or the integrated transport study, in terms of things like minimum lane widths, tactile pavings, paintings. If we agreed to 2, how are they going to be addressed?
Another point in the same resolution is putting the items forward for the 2019 budget. So we have to plan forward. We have to plan for the items that we could achieve by the current budget, because the budget is set. It was set for the safety audit. It wasn't set for this specific project. So we need to work out what, prioritize what we can do with this available budget, and then we go through the rest of the stuff which has been identified in the transport.
Sorry,
so we will look to integrate as much as we can and get as much of it as we can done in the project within the budget that we've got.
Sorry, I think 2 is quite misleading, because it says to take the balance of funds from the recently completed Baldwins-Buckley's-Linwood intersection safety project for the Buckley's Road bus passenger facilities upgrade. That was not a safety project, that was a traffic signals project. I've sent the start work notice around. The intersection safety project was still in the plan. So
yeah, and that's what we're saying is we've done it.
We actually haven't done that project yet. There's been no public engagement on that project, and you've got a report that identifies a whole bunch of safety improvements that we could do, and yet you're still saying that we should take that money off and put it into another one. I just don't think that that's fair in terms of the people that may make submissions for an annual plan or an LTP having an expectation that there's a project there. So I actually think 2 does need to be amended to accurately reflect what has already happened, and I do think we need some clarity over what of the safety things will not be funded if we agree to 2.
Safety issues.
So, excuse me a second, it's through the chair. My understanding is that all of the safety measures possible have been done at all Buckley-Linwood. We've put protected right turns in. That has improved. There's no more filter turns for pedestrians. So we've done everything we can by putting protected right turns in through the signal phasing. It was done in a relatively low cost way, and there is additional funding left over in the project, and it has been done.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand from a community point of view.
So
they have an expectation that we'll do a safety project. It's in our LTP, it's in our annual plan. We say, here's a project that we're going to do in year whatever, and we've somehow gone from that work that's going to happen in the future, that's going to have a plan that comes probably through a community board into council with public consultation and engagement, to we've already done the work as a traffic signals upgrade, and therefore there's no more engagement and there's no more improvements that we're going to do. The report itself lists a huge number of recommendations in terms of safety.
this report,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, but these
So we
are
haven't
not,
done all the
these
work
are not
that's
related
required.
to this specific intersection as such. The only recommendation which relates to the same intersection is a further review after 5 years, when we've got enough history of the operation of the intersection to find out whether the implementation which has been done have been effective at that time in the future.
So we put projects on the LTP a long time in advance. We need to do the work and figure out what they are. We do an assessment of what we think the costs will be, and then we do the feasibility, we work it out. We've done as much as we can do at that intersection, and we did it for less than we thought we needed. When we set up the LTP years beforehand, we are now suggesting that we use the money to provide protected pedestrian crossing along the road, which has been asked for from the community, and we do some of the other safety upgrades that are identified in this report. And then we've set up a program to put the rest in.
So can I just ask, what's the public engagement? Like, if we were normally upgrading an intersection for a safety improvement, would we have any public engagement?
Depends on what we're doing.
So presumably, the fact that both the staff recommendation that went to the community board and the community board recommendation that's in front of council today refers to this project as recently completed, indicates that the staff view is that that project has been completed recently, and that the community board by majority accepted that that project had been completed recently. So that's the environment in which we're working.
It's not factually correct. I've sent you the start of work notice.
I thought we were asking questions, not into debate.
Yeah, I mean, the way that this is presented is in an environment where that work is accepted to have been done. If there's work that needs to be, or if there are questions that need to be answered offline about that particular project, so that a particular member can be comfortable that that work has been done, that's all well and good. But what I'm seeing is that staff and the community board by majority are accepting that that project is completed recently.
Yes.
So let's move on from that, and if there's a need for an offline conversation to explain more fully how that's occurred, then let's do that. But in the meantime, let's take the position that's in front of us, which is that that work has been completed and there's a balance of funds that could be applied to the project we're talking about today.
Can I just get the legal advice on whether we can, what the level of engagement's needed or required or consultation over taking a project off our long-term plan that we've already consulted on and approved and putting it in towards another project without any public consultation?
Except that we've already heard that we're not taking a project off. A project has been completed within a smaller budget than that originally allocated through the LTP, which then allows for that additional, that remaining funding to be reallocated to this project. So we're not agreed that we're working in a context where we're taking a project off. A project has been completed within a lower budget than that was originally anticipated.
Could I just clarify, because I just looked at the start work notice. So in terms of intersection improvements and the safety of intersections, which I'm assuming that project was about, where has that project gone from on the list? So you know how that ranked?
I can't answer that off the top of my head here, I'm sorry.
So do we know that the safety of that intersection is improved? I mean, it's a big.
Well, we have to monitor it after we've done the work to know that, and we do that with every intersection. Yeah.
Presumably the project had some project outcomes, desired project outcomes attached, and presumably in proposing the interventions and doing the work, we expect that the project will deliver the project outcomes. Obviously, it remains to be seen through monitoring over time whether that's the case or not, and if it's not, then we would need to come back and revisit that. But presumably the normal process wouldn't be that we hold any unexpended funds on budget pending the outcome of monitoring over an extended period. We say, we've done this project, now we've got some spare money, we can use that on something else that's useful to this community at this time.
Yes.
All right, so working in that environment, Sarah.
Yeah. So my recollection from the board meeting where we discussed this is that staff went through a process where they worked out what the specific safety issues were, and that most of those could be addressed in a way that didn't require the physical works that would result in consultation. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
Okay, thanks. I've got something I'd like to move, so the community board recommendation plus a couple of tweaks, when we get to it.
Yep, all right, so I'll come to you as the mover at that time and note that you're going to be moving some amended wording. That's fine. All right, thank you. So moving through questions, And I'm keen to focus on the substantive issue rather than questions about how we've arrived at the environment that we're working in. Dave.
Actually, in reflection, my comments are more
Appropriate for debate?
related to debate.
Yep, all right, I'll come back to you in debate. Mike.
Thank you. I've got a question around the amount of funding that's coming from this project. So it's around $1.1 million. Now, from reading through reports and old reports, that the actual work to for this project, the bus stop, is actually going to be around $4.4 million. So are we going to be restricted to a $1.1 million project there if this is approved? Because obviously we're going to have enhanced far rates and the capital acceleration.
Because a certain amount of this work is, well, actually all of it probably will come under either safety or PT. It will qualify as long as we can substantively build it in the next 3 years for the targeted enhanced FAR. So if we can get going on it, we can, we can then put it in the pot for extra, and we'll be able to push that money further and get more done. But we will be doing as much as we can for that money. But the first focus is on getting a pedestrian crossing across, a mid-block crossing across the road.
Okay, so the 1.1 is going to be for the mid.
It's not. It won't take all of the 1.1 to do a mid-block crossing.
Okay, so then we'll have to look to do additional. So and that will come in a revised transport program that will come through, feed into the.
Yeah, so this will be also part of the target for the revised program when we look, because we're looking to focus on PT as one of the key key categories of focus in for the targeted enhanced FAR from NZTA.
Thank you. Phil.
Thank you. There's reference in the report for around the public transport review, which, as we know, has gone out for consultation and I think is yet to be decided on.
Yes.
But I'm just wondering, have you got any information already that, in fact, or which will give us a steer as to how we utilise this interchange for the long term, or are there going to be changes with the routes that we know of?
I think the thing is that there is still a need for the pedestrian crossing and the other safety measures to be undertaken, like tactiles, etc. So there's a lot of work that can be done that won't be undone, which I think is what you're asking. And by the time we're getting to that point, we will be through the RPTP, and we would be working with ECAN to make sure we're not doing work that needs to be undone.
Thank you.
So if there was any significant change to passenger services coming through Eastgate as a result of the plan that's out for consultation at the moment, you'd have the ability to take that into account within the recommendations that we're approving today.
So there are some changes pending at the end of this month, but we're working with ECAN on all of them to make sure we know where we're going with that.
Yep. All right. That's fine. Thank you. Okay, so no further questions. Vicky.
One, so I'm just still confused about two. So the intersection safety project is in the long-term plan in the years 19-20. So it hasn't yet happened. So how are we taking...
It's already been done under another budget, that's the issue.
So why was it put
there
in
has
the plan
been
then?
safety measures undertaken at the intersection through the traffic signals upgrade that we believe will achieve that we believe achieve the objectives of that project.
So that was done this year?
Yep.
So why was it put in the LTP?
It was a bit of a crossover.
Bit of a what?
It was a crossover of information.
Can I explain this?
So had the information you provided to this meeting today been made available in the LTP considerations,
We might not have.
the recommendation would have been that this project was, or this funding was not required in the future year of the LTP because the work had already been done.
There is a need to do work out there for both safety, pedestrian safety, and to improve bus and PT facilities out there. So we're still suggesting to leave the money in the area and use it in the area.
Thank you.
So is that the total 800,000 comes off? That's in the budget for 19-20.
So my understanding is there's about 270,000 in FY19, in financial year 19, and in financial year 20 there's 800,000, so it's about 1.1 million, which is what's on there.
Thank you. So, Sarah, now coming to you, you'd indicated that you'd like to move this but with some amended wording. So have we captured that amended wording already? All right.
So, reading I sent through earlier, looked at including the Linwood-Eastgate hub in the transport program as part of the 2018-19 annual plan. Noting the comments that Lynette's made about the additional funding coming through at the moment. Currently, the hub actually isn't on any sort of transport plan or program that we've got anywhere, and so doing that is a really good idea. I've also got a couple more here that I've just sent through that might have arrived. The one that Dion addressed earlier is in number 2, just at the end, noting that community consultation will be undertaken on the project.
Yep.
Which should be... No, on the future project that we're just approving the funding to go towards,
yep.
Which is what Dion was asking. So for at the end of number 2 there, just adding that. And then to do with the deputation today, adding in number 4, which was requested that staff meet with the Chair of ITE, Peter Jasper and ECAN to discuss issues raised in the deputation today. So
and that just formalises the request that I made at the end of the deputation.
And involves ECAN in the discussion, since they're the operators of the bus service, which is causing the issues currently.
Yeah, fantastic. That just reflects the response at the end of the deputation. It just formalises that. That's great.
So just waiting for that to...
All right, so that's all looking good. All right, so that's the wording, should be now up on the screen. You're comfortable with all of that? Oh, yeah, so they put that at the beginning, that's cool. All right, so you're happy to move that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just think it needs to be more than the chair of the ITE committee. If the chair is unable to make, should be
local councillor,
chair, deputy, and any other members of the committee also.
Yeah, that's
fine. Would we not want the local councillor to be involved here as well?
Yeah.
I think that would be realistic.
Yeah.
I think it belongs with the committee. I think it belongs with the committee. It's appropriate. There's the chair and...
It's just the ITE committee.
Yeah, the chair of the ITE committee.
And other councillors, and other interested councillors.
And other, yeah. I would actually add in so the Infrastructure, Transport and Environment Committee, the local councillor, the local ward councillor, and other interested councillors, Peter Jasper and ECAN, to discuss the issues raised. That's fine.
So take out chair of infrastructure and just say the Infrastructure, Transport and Environment.
I think the chair should be included.
Deputy could do it.
I mean, I'll definitely come, but I think all the committees should be invited to that.
But that's covered by other interested councillors.
Yeah, we're covered by interested councillors.
Yep. I think
make
that's
sure
fine.
the invite goes to.
All right, so Sarah, you've moved that.
Yeah.
Do we have a seconder for this resolution? Anne. Thank you. Debate. Yanni.
I want to move an amendment to 2 as well, and that it lie on the table until we receive legal advice as to the appropriateness of taking money from one project to another. I don't feel confident in the advice that we're getting today, and I actually want to get more advice, especially given what we've got with Harewood Breens coming up, where they were told that they can't just substitute another project because it has to go through an annual plan. And that's exactly what 2's doing, in my opinion, but I appreciate that there's a difference of view. But I would like us to get advice, given that we're potentially taking a line item project off that we've publicly consulted on through the annual plan and the LTP, and replacing it with another project.
So your amendment is to leave this whole... So you're saying an amendment to leave 2 lying on the table. Presumably it means what you're wanting is to leave the whole lot lying on the table.
Well, just 2, but I mean, if people want to leave the other ones, but I don't think the other ones are actually going to do anything in the short term anyway, because A, there's no funding on budget, and B, there's other meetings that need to happen.
All right, so your amendment then is exactly what?
That point 2 lie on the table until we can receive legal advice around the level of consultation and engagement required to delete a current project on our LTP and substitute it with another.
Lying on the,
Are we able to,
lying on the table is a procedural motion, I think.
rather than, I mean, is there advice, Ian, that you're able to provide now that answers that question without the need for an amendment to be moved?
Just from listening to the debate, it seems to me that the board has already looked at these issues, and Councillor Johansson has had the opportunity to put these to the board, and the board nonetheless has made its recommendation to the council. So my feeling is that yes, Councillor Johansson doesn't agree with it. In terms of the advice given to you by staff with regard to the provision in the LTP, if you want further advice on that and further clarification, then by all means let this lie on the table until the next meeting, when staff can come back to you with clarification of some of the issues that have been raised.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the amendment? So the amendment, Aaron. Okay. Yanni, you've...
That's right.
All right.
Sure.
So I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? No. That sounded like it didn't carry.
Yep.
Okay, so now we'll move on with the motion as it's been moved and seconded. So is there any debate on the motion as it stands? Sarah.
Thank you. For many years now we have heard from the Linwood community that the bus facilities on Buckley's Road are not appropriate. It is the third busiest suburban bus interchange in the city after Papanui and Northlands and Riccarton. And the residents of this area and those who use it heading back home mainly towards Aranui, Brighton and the coast deserve better facilities than this. We have been asking for a long time, the community has been asking for a long time. We went through a very extended process with a lot of debate looking at where the best place for a bus hub would be. The community board last April and then the council decided, based on the community board's recommendation last May, that it would be on Buckley's Road. However, this work that was supposed to be due in time for the long-term plan to put it into a program was not done until very recently, and so to put a hold to things now would not be in the best interests of the community. What we need to do is get this underway. We've been through all of the other discussions, and I know that there are people who disagree, but we've been through a very robust process and a democratic process voting on it, and it's time to get it underway. That's it for now.
Thank you. Yanni.
Thank you. So a few months ago we got a resident survey that showed we've got one of the highest levels of dissatisfaction from our community and one of the lowest levels of satisfaction. Within that survey there was a target, we had a 50% satisfaction with the ability to participate in and contribute to council decision making, and our performance was 28%. 28%. The public level of influence and democratic process, our target was 55 and we're at 33. Here's a very good example about why people feel disconnected to this council. There was no public engagement on the apparent safety improvement project. It was simply a start work notice delivered to the local community board a few days before the project commenced to say that the traffic signals were going to be upgraded. That was despite the fact we had a safety project in the budget for a few years into the future. At that time, it was requested that we actually engage the community for the safety project and do it at the same time. That was rejected. So people in this area get no say in the safety improvements that we're doing in their local community. Why is that acceptable in a city and in a democracy that we live in Christchurch? I would argue it is not. The issue here is the fact that we are robbing a safety intersection improvement that we publicly consulted on through our LTP, and to pay for a public transport hub where there is still not a clear idea about what that PT hub should look like and how much it's going to cost. I do not support taking money off budget for a line item in our long-term plan without any community engagement. There were a huge number of recommendations in the traffic, in the integrated corridor study, things like directional pavers, things like road markings, road widths that create huge hazards and risks in this area. And I cannot support taking money off that project where there are clearly identified safety concerns that have been raised through this report, which I've sent around to all of you, and putting it into a public transport project that we still haven't got certainty on where the future of the bus routes are going in the city. But what we know with ECAN is that they've actually been cutting the bus routes to Eastgate. The other thing is that where's our vision for this city? We actually should have integrated transport hubs like the 2008 report that Abley did, that talked about having an integrated waiting room within the mall or within the Cranley Street that goes through the mall, so that people get a good level of public passenger service. Why is it acceptable to do that in Riccarton and spend millions of dollars on improving public transport interchanges in Riccarton and in Northlands, but not in Linwood? Why should Linwood get the lowest, cheapest possible solution that actually doesn't provide a good level of amenity for people that use the bus? I am totally opposed to number 1 and 2 of this resolution. I think this is totally against the way in which we should be engaging with our communities. You've heard from people today about the concerns, how they lack the trust in us to make good decisions because of the processes that we have applied. Please don't continue that today. Vote against 1 and 2 and support 3 and 4.
Thank you. David.
Yeah, thank you. Just probably going on a little bit from Yanni's presentation here. I note, comments from staff that this is a high-level transport plan and that there are further considerations can be made. I also want to make the point that really most of the bus issues that we deal with revolve around the major malls. So we do have Northlands, we do have Riccarton, Eastgate, the Palms, Barrington to a certain level. All of those malls are where we seem to have the issues. The bus stops generally all significantly benefit the malls, yet there's no contribution from the malls to our transport plan. We have issues with the central city at the moment where we are trying to get the central city uplifted, and we hear continually there's competition with the malls. People are shopping in the malls rather than coming into the city. And you could arguably say that these bus stops that are perpetuating patronage of the malls. So I think going forward we need some changes in our transport options and maybe the district plan that require the malls to provide bus stops, or alternatively I believe we need to be purchasing properties to provide off-road bus interchanges around these significantly large malls. I hear it time and time again, the volume of buses that are lining up outside these malls is phenomenal, and yet we seem to be accommodating bus solutions that are at the expense of all the other businesses or the individual landowners adjacent to these properties. So I would strongly support Yanni's thoughts on this, and also indicate that we really need a rethink of how we are accommodating our bus services in conjunction with the major malls. Thank you.
Aaron.
Yeah, I'd just like to support what Dave and Yanni have said. Yanni's words especially, although at the start there was like it was like Mick Jagger performing. There was so many satisfactions. But that aside, points 1 and 2, I really hope are supported by everyone at the table in a way, because number 1 is not funded, so that'll help from what we heard in our pre-discussion this morning for an item later on. And number 2 is moving funding around, so even better for safety improvements. So I hope those 2 are supported by everyone.
Any further debate before I come back to Sarah for the right of reply? Sarah.
Thank you. I'd just like to address a couple of Yanni's points. Firstly, his point around the residents' dissatisfaction with council decision making. And from what I see, what I hear, what I read, is that the dissatisfaction with council decision making is frequently due to the fact that we don't make decisions and we constantly put off work, nitpicking over every small detail. And also his concern that we don't know what a bus hub might look like, and that's the point of this today. The whole point of this today is to get this work off the ground so that we can go out to our community and say, what would a bus hub look like here? ECAN have been cutting bus routes through this area as patronage is lower than hoped for. However, putting off upgrading the facilities will only add to this. And voting for the resolutions today will mean that we don't, voting against the resolutions today will mean that we don't have the funding on budget to engage or consult with our community on what it might look like.
Thank you. I'll put the motion.
1 and 2 separate.
Yeah, I'll do that. So I'll put 1 and 2 first. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against?
No, just have that recorded.
Yep, thank you. And then I'll put the paragraphs 3 and 4. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. So then moving on to the next